To the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Brendan Weigel.
Here.
Judy Obala. Steve Ballage.
Here.
Eddie Miller. Lori Summers. Here. Denise Winfrey. Here. Rick Perry.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. We have minutes from September 11th. Any additions or corrections? We have a motion to...
Second.
Motion, second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our first case, ZC 18037. Jessica, give us an update.
I'll be giving the update for this case, actually, Mr. Chairman. So zoning case ZC-18-037 takes place in Wilmington Township. It is a request for a special use permit for a solar farm facility. The owners are James and Lori Fleischman, and the agents, the agents are Jess Ingram and Shane Shields of Cypress Creek Renewables, which is the sole managing member of Fleischman Solar LLC. The parcel is 152 acres. And the special use area itself is only 39.18 acres. And the solar farm components themselves, the panels, the inverters, the roads, etc., would only be occupying about 19 of those acres. At the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting last week, the commission added an additional condition, condition number 12, which is outlined in your agenda in your packet. And at the meeting, there was one objector. There was one concerned resident who asked a couple of questions but did not identify themselves as an objector. The two property owners were actually there and spoke about this proposal as well. Staff recommended approval of the special use permit with the 11 conditions, and then that 12th condition was added by the commission. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with those 12 conditions.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. We have questions?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple questions. I noticed that in there it said there was no leases were given because the wrong parcel number was identified. Can you explain that one to me?
I believe in the NRI report, there was an incorrect parcel identified by the Little South Cook Soil and Water Conservation District, and that is why the lease score was not provided.
Okay, I was curious on that. And then what about IDNR's concerns with wetlands and the Blandings turtle habitat for...
Correct. So that was condition number 11. Approval of the final site plan by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources is required because of the presence of those turtles, perhaps in the vicinity of the project site. We are requiring that the final site plan be reviewed and approved by IDNR.
Okay. And the final thing is, currently they don't have any agreement with the road commissioner, but before they could ever move forward, they would go ahead and do that. Is that typical that we don't have an agreement at this point?
Currently, we have what we call I believe it's the road use, it's a sort of a it's a recognition that they will be entering into a formal agreement with the road commissioner. So we do have a document that is signed by both parties,
okay,
the road commissioner and Cypress Creek Renewables, saying that yes, when the time comes for site development and the building permit process, we will enter into the formal agreement. But right now, the parties have met, and they have come to sort of an informal preliminary agreement.
Okay, good, because I would be uncomfortable if there was no agreement, but as long as that's in place.
Yes, that has already been, yes.
All right, thank you.
Are there any objectors to this proposal? Any objectors to this proposal? Any objectors? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, ZC 18040. Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zoning case ZC-18-040 takes place in Troy Township, and the applicant is requesting a map amendment from I-1 to I-2 and a special use permit for a truck terminal. The owner is ABS Building Management LLC, and the attorney is Mark Scarlato. The parcel is 9.74 acres, and it borders up to the river, so the developable, the portion of the lot that is able to be developed is only a small portion of that site, and will require, obviously, a site development permit and a building permit in the future if the applicant so chooses to construct a building, which is not the intent at this time. At the Planning and Zoning Commission last week, there was one objector who questioned whether the applicant would be able to remove trees from the area of the parcel that borders the river. They live across the river. The applicants, again, that is in a floodplain, in a floodway, and that's not a buildable portion of the site, so the applicant would not be able to even build over there. So removal of those trees logistically would not be something that they would pursue at this time or ever on the parcel. However, the commission may want, or the committee may want to add that as a condition that removal of the trees would be prohibited in that area. The Planning and Zoning Commission did not add that as a condition. Staff recommended approval of both the map amendment and the special use permit. The special use permit with 5 conditions that are outlined in your packet. And the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the map amendment and the special use permit with those staff recommended 5 conditions.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second,
Second, and I have a question.
questions?
Janine, if I understood you correctly, for the people who live across the river, the trees provide a screen for them having to look at the truck terminal. Is that
Correct.
Yes. Okay. I'm fine with seconding. I would like to have it as a condition that the trees stay put.
So you made a motion to do that?
Make a motion to amend to add that condition.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Any objectors to this? Any objectors? Okay, we'll vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll vote on the motion as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That was for the zoning map amendment. We'll now vote on the special use permit. We have a motion to approve. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, ECO 18043.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ZC 18042 was tabled last month. The committee wanted more discussion on the density of the solar farm projects on East Good Mill Road. There have been no changes from a staff perspective in the last month. I think it was just brought for additional discussion on the committee. But I'm happy to answer any other questions we have about that case from last month.
We make a motion to take it off the table.
We did.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Questions? Judy?
So it was tabled last month because I had a couple issues. that I wanted for us further discussion. Unfortunately, our state's attorney is not here today.
We have a state's attorney.
Oh, we do? Okay, I don't know him. So Matt gave you the information?
Gave you some information, yes.
So a couple of the questions were related to density, about whether we could restrict density at all or not. And could you give us the information that he provided you?
The information that I have is that the density restrictions were not something we could substantially change based on what is currently regulated according to the zoning ordinance and the zoning map.
So I talked with Mary Tatro because I didn't see Matt, and I didn't know you were a state's attorney. And she had said to me that because it is already limited by the state, they only will give out so many licenses. So even though we are giving out various different special use permits, it's preliminary for them getting a license from the state. They cannot, each geographical area will only be issued so many licenses. I just can't stand the shaking your head here. So the density issue is something that is sort of predetermined by the state, controlled by the state, and that we at the county cannot do anything about it. The other thing was the safety issues related to it. I know Lori had that safety issue, so perhaps she wants to talk about that.
I believe that that was taken care of. The setback's going to be 100 feet. That was my biggest concern. That was the only reason I brought it up last time, was from the safety standpoint. So,
And that setback is set, so if the fence is 5 foot, then they don't have to have that extended setback. It would be, what would the setback be if the fence was only 5 foot?
So a 5-foot fence is permitted in the setback. The developer doesn't have any intention of putting in a 5-foot fence within the setback, so for that reason, they'll be obligated to meet the 100-foot.
Right.
And even if they put landscaping, we have a vision clearance setbacks. So if you're looking from the center line of the intersection, that you have to have, clear view. If you draw 175 feet, 75 feet into a triangle, you'd have to have clear vision, and that's for the motorists to make sure they're able to see. So if they did have landscaping near the intersection, we have that second provision to address that. So at least you're able to see within the trees or whatever the case may be if they were put there. So I think the developer has every intention, kind of during that pre-application meeting that we have as a condition, that can be something that we would want to make sure that there's no issues at that intersection for obviously very valid safety reasons.
Correct. And most of that, again, is our standard for the solar farms in the area. That setback is set at 100 feet because they have a 7-foot fence.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments by the committee?
I just wanted to mention to the committee regarding density. Approval in the comment territory is looking at about 14% right now. That's your odds of getting your project approved. Those were numbers given to me about a week and a half ago by ComEd. ComEd's going to be presenting at executive with me to give you all an update on those numbers and also some residential tools that are now available. And then also just a reminder that we will be going to the solar farm in Streeter this Friday. If you haven't, let me know. If you have an RSVP, let me know so I can make sure we are accounted for. Right now, we only have about 4 county board members who have RSVP'd. So I'll ask if possibly we can send out just one last reminder today so I can give them a courtesy heads up on how many folks are coming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any objectors to this proposal?
I signed up to speak.
Come down to the podium.
Okay. Oh, awesome.
State your name, please.
Meredith Orange, 2805 State Street, Stager, Illinois. And I apologize if I'm a little late on these proceedings. I just used the Goodnow Groves, which is the access road where this is going to be where this is proposed. And so I just had a couple quick questions regarding that, if this is the appropriate time to ask them.
Sure.
Perfect. I saw that there are 2 endangered species that were identified, the Masasawa and the Kiteman river snake. And I saw that the EcoCat and the DNR approved it. It seems like they used an online database and they didn't really do an on-site visual. I'm just wondering if the environmental part of it was just done on a database alone and not a site visit. I'm just concerned, I know there's a lot of solar activity that's going to go on in that area, so it's a buffer zone, in my opinion, for the Goodnow Groves Preserve and those species that may utilize that area. And I see that it's also 10 acres approved, but a 30-acre parcel that's going to be approved, so I wondered about expansion and things like that.
Well, staff, can you answer that?
So I can't speak to how the Illinois Department of Natural Resources kind of evaluates their proposals. I know the EcoCat, that's a database. That's general. It's whatever comes up within a certain vicinity. What they get is those kind of general results are sent to them, and they review it looking at the site. I can't speak to whether that's a site visit, if it's using aerial imagery. Usually if you're within the vicinity of a forest preserve or any sort of natural preserve, body of water, you know, I don't know if they make the assumption that, yeah, it might be living in there. So each time it's different. As you saw with the Wilmington example, I mean, they must have looked at the proximity to the river and said that, yes, this is going to, you know, the migrating turtles must cross the property. They came to some sort of determination of that. So with this one, they came to the determination that it wouldn't be impacted. How they come to that, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I think Brandon from the state, it's typically they use the online database for that. So I guess not my question, but my concern would be that as, not this project in particular, but solar farming as a whole in that area, I would just like you to consider that there is a buffer zone at least around these preserves like Goodnow Groves as a migratory. I'm not sure about a solar farm and the migratory pathway in this particular one, but as a whole for your whole area, I know it's 14% approval, but I mean, there's just so many of those animals just don't stay on the preserve, right? They have to migrate, and so I guess that's my biggest concern for overdeveloping with solar. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
What, I'm stuck in.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is EC 18050. Who's going to take the staff? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ZC 18050 is owned by the First Bank of Manhattan Trust number 846, where Donald Shrebro is 100% interest. The request is for a map amendment from A1 to E2, and this occurs in Manhattan Township. The parcel is currently 20.05 acres and is improved with a tree and crop farm. There is a gravel driveway entrance on the eastern side of the property, and the applicant wishes to divide the parcel into 3 parcels, 2 5-acre and 1 10-acre parcel, each meeting the E2 block standards. The staff recommended approval for this map amendment. No objectors were present, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval.
Thank you. Any questions? We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions by committee? Any objectors to this? Any objectors? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On that last case, the solar farm, I didn't have the additional concerning utilities lines. Shouldn't we add that in?
So do you want us to just add kind of the same standard condition that anything that's required by the utility
Right.
will be, okay, so.
Okay, let's have a motion. Do we have the motion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay. No, they should put them on. Next case, ECO 52. Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ZC 18052 takes place in Green Garden Township. The owner is the Ranch Sports Club LLC, where Mr. Dale Coleman is 100% interest. The attorney is Lorian Shainstead. The parcel is 10.043 acres and is requesting a special use permit for a private recreational club. The property is improved with a 9,800 square foot bull barn that currently has basketball courts and batting cages. It was originally built in 2011 with building permit 1100283, but there is no records, according to the Will County Land Use Department, of it ever being converted as an interior or a gymnasium. There are floodplains and wetlands located on the southern portion of the property. Staff recommended approval with 3 conditions. There were no objectors to the request, and we did receive comments from Green Garden Township requesting a prohibition of firearms discharged on the site, as well as from the Village of Frankfort requesting the limitation of the special use permit to just the pole building. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the special use permit for the entire site based on the 3 recommended conditions.
Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Comments?
So I just want to ask a question. Now, when I was doing the reading on this, was one of the things that was mentioned that maybe we did not want to allow the transfer to the next next owner of it. We have Jim is here. That's his district. I kind of like to hear what he has to say on that, please.
I have to say I have a number of concerns. Certainly I have the same concerns at Green Garden and Frankfort, and those conditions absolutely should be placed. But, you know, when I look at the original purpose, where they put up a pole barn, it basically kind of rural residential area, and not really turn this into some kind of, it appears, some kind of commercial endeavor. You know, I have some problems with it. I mean, they're doing a gymnasium. Is this, you know, what is the total operation? Do we have a good handle on exactly what goes on there? And I guess I'm asking the next question first.
To answer that question, the applicant is hoping to offer basketball and baseball training facility for the local sports teams. He does have a goal of possibly installing an outdoor baseball stadium sometime in the future within the 10 acres.
And what is the 10 acres zoning?
It's currently A1.
I just don't see these kind of uses in an A1 district. The more I look at it, the more I feel I'm going to oppose it. And I'm a little surprised that the staff is basically saying this is an appropriate use, and now he's talking about putting a stadium there. So there's some kind of outdoor facility, which means then, you know, he's probably going to hold tournaments there and invite other teams in. I mean, I just see this going in the wrong direction. So, you know, I'm I'm not in favor of this. In part, and I would ask that, well, why do you feel this is an appropriate use in A1? I guess I'm asking the question since you basically approve it, recommend approval with conditions. I just don't see, these type of facilities are all over the place, maybe on a little bigger scale. If you told me you were going to put this at the Green Garden Country Club in that big dome, okay. But, the surrounding is all agriculture, is this being farmed? Or is it resident, with folks that are near the residents?
Brian, can you answer that?
Well, there's a couple of questions here that I'm going to try to respond to, and then I may have to have Margie respond to some of them as well. The Will County zoning ordinance allows recreational uses in the A1 zoning district. This requires a special use permit in the A1 zoning district. So like ball fields, parks, and recreation, that's the type of use that's encouraged in some of these districts. Now, with this case, it's a special use, and that's what this committee and what the board needs to determine is, do you feel that it's appropriate in this area? It's staff's opinion based on the ordinance criteria that are adopted by the county board that the special use is appropriate in the area. Second, Green Garden's concerned about hunting and shooting. Those are like if you're going to have like a firearms club or shooting club, that's a whole other special use permit. So that's not even allowed under this use. And if they wanted to ever do anything like that, they'd have to come back to the board and get that approval. Now, Frankfurt has indicated that they'd like everything contained to the building. I do know that the applicant would like to, in the future, construct some ball fields to have baseball practice, tournaments, things of that nature in the future. So in this area, staff believes that it is appropriate. I wasn't at the specific site, but I'll let Margie answer what is immediately in the area.
Can I answer just respond to one thing that you mentioned, Brian, and that is, yes, recreation was allowed in A1, but I believe the intent was for parks. Wasn't, I don't think, meant for what I consider commercial. There's a difference between straight out recreational and somebody who's running a commercial business. He's charging. That's the difference here. And when you mentioned it allowed in A1, I did recall, we've let parks go in A1. We've let other public entities do recreational facilities in A1. But I don't recall ever disguising a commercial use under recreational. It's not recreational, it's still business. I think there's a difference. That's all I'm saying.
I think we've approved soccer fields in the past.
Okay, soccer fields, but they're generally not by a private entity, and they're not generally. Usually it'll be a park district. It could be potentially a soccer club, I guess, but I don't recall everything in those. So
I think
this is a much more intense use, Tom. Yeah, I guess that's my point. My point is you can look at this as recreational, and I'm looking at this as a commercial business, not a recreational business. So that's.
Okay,
we've allowed.
The petitioner here,
I'm the attorney for the petitioner.
would you like to just come down and say anything about this?
Sure.
State your name.
My name is Lorianne Shankson. I'm an attorney at Rathbun, Zervnak & Kozel, 3260 Executive Drive in Joliet. Just to address a couple of the things that were brought up. Right now, my understanding with speaking with Mr. Coleman is that he just wants the ability to have possibly a baseball field just for some practice, not a stadium or anything with tournaments. I don't think that's his focus. The barn was changed sometime a couple of years ago, and he purchased it as is and decided to wanted to comply with all of county requirements, all of Green Garden Township requirements. He didn't want to rezone it to commercial because once you rezone it, you can't go back to A1. So this maintains the integrity of the zoning while also utilizing something that's already there, getting business tax dollars in, helping local teams. This isn't going to be as commercial as might be perceived. This is just for the local teams that are in Frankfort and Lenox because they don't really have any kind of after-hours practice area. And he kind of put the word out, wanted to feel the situation, and he had a lot of interest from just the small grade school and high school teams that might just need a place to practice where they don't have the facilities now.
Any
Still
questions?
commercial operation, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I guess I'm trying to make a distinction of when we allow, when we say recreation is allowed in A1, I don't think the intent was to let a commercial business go into A1 under the umbrella of recreation. I think there's a difference. You know, that's my concern here. Because when you're opening up the door, do we have any, this is a question for staff, are you aware of any other operation of this nature in A1? Or will this be the first? That's actually a commercial. I mean, I know there's like golf courses, you know.
I just want to point something out. When we're talking about A1, and a lot of this stuff gets into ag tourism, you know, so when you look at A1, we allow wine distilleries and, you know, stuff like that. And that's commercial. Then we allow wedding barns, which is commercial. We allow, I mean, you go down the list and we allow all kinds of different commercial things in A1 inside of ag tourism. And I'm not sure if this is the same type of thing where it's part of ag tourism where they're allowed to have fields. Now, if they're going to go into stadiums and stuff, that's a whole different animal. But if you're just making fields for the local kids, is that part of ag tourism? Well, I guess the question I have.
I think it's interesting you bring that up, Steve. I guess it's something similar. I mean, we tell one person, you can't have these things in your barn, and then we're telling another one you can. I suppose there's also other kind of guidelines. Are you gonna make them sprinkle it? Is there gonna be fire suppression? I mean, there's a building code side, which I assume they'll address. But I guess my concern is you letting a commercial business go into A1 under the, like I said, the umbrella of this is recreation. It's a business, it's not recreation. As far as I'm concerned, it's a business. You know?
Brian, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just to answer some of these questions. That is right, it is commercial, it is a business, and that's why it's a special use permit. Other uses are permitted by right, that's why this one is a special use, and it's up to the board and the committee to determine is this appropriate in this location. And then also to address commercial code, yes, the building will have to be built to a commercial code. The applicant is aware of that, and they've agreed to come into compliance with the change of use permit, so things will need to be done to the building. Ultimately, any sort of fire suppression will be determined by use and by the fire district. So all those things will be addressed if this use does continue.
In the commercial code, you know, we mandate you have to have a certain amount of parking spaces depending on the use. I don't know the calculation outside there. There is a calculation or requirement. So is that also part of the code?
Yeah, so zoning code sets the standard for the number of parking spaces based on use. So everything that would be required in that instance would be required in this situation because it is a change of use. This was not the original use of this property.
That's the other point. I have issues with it.
Maybe we should table this to get more information or various caucuses, so we have more information about it.
Here's my issue. It's really not this particular case. My issue is that you're now setting a precedent to let commercial kind of businesses go in agricultural areas under some kind of other guideline. And this is probably something that needs to be addressed in our zoning ordinance, which of course is a little lengthy, you know. And I would ask that this be put on the list, be addressed within our zoning ordinance, because I think it's a little push. Personally, I would go to agriculture. You know?
Well, that's why we require a special use permit.
Well, I understand, but I'm wondering if here again, my feeling is that was in there originally to let parks. I dealt with this years ago. It was to let parks go into A1 areas. It was not for private sector, necessarily commercial businesses, to go into A1. We put it so parks could remain in A1. That was the intent. I believe that was the intent. You know, now if you're going to be stuck, if people are going to use it for other things, then I think we should address it within the ordinance.
Jim, that's why I said I think maybe we should table this, because we voted already in the past to allow wine distilleries on this stuff, which is a commercial entity.
But that's because it's wine.
Right, but
very often it's
I'm just saying,
agricultural uses.
We have wedding barns.
It has nothing. This has no relationship to agriculture whatsoever.
Right. Either does the case we had before, or a wedding barn. We had a couple months of that. And
well, that has nothing necessarily to do with.
But I mean, that has nothing to do with this.
And we made the case why that shouldn't be done. Right? Everything had to be more of a commercial.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that we need more information. I'd like to table this and really have a discussion about it.
I guess
so we know where we're going.
In that case, a different standard was applied than is being applied here, in my opinion. Even though I think potentially, as far as the heavier use, may not be much different. I mean, what's the maybe the attorney knows this, or maybe the staff knows this. So what's the maximum amount of occupancy can be in that bar?
We have 30 on our application.
Pardon?
30 at any given time, yes.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's
Yes.
not bad.
Just enough for one team
Yeah.
and parents.
So,
Yeah.
Look, we can also say we have horse stables in agricultural areas, which are commercial businesses, but it's directly related to agriculture, right? So, I just, my concern is you're opening up the gates to commercial businesses being in agricultural communities, and they're not going to be compatible.
Okay, Judy, you have a comment?
Yeah, so one of the things you brought up was a wedding barn. I think wedding barns are something that's in right now. I think it's more like almost like a tourism thing, that it brings people out to the area. That you can't have a wedding barn in a commercial setting. Really, you have to have it on a farm. So to me, it seems like it's more ag-related because they're looking for that environment, that scene. As far as playing basketball and baseball, it is a park-related, recreation. And so to me, it is a difference. There's a big difference between a wedding barn and possibly something like this. And then if we approve this, what's the next step that somebody might do as far as staying in A1? A1 has a lot lower taxes and that's the release.
Right, that's why they do this.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Well, the assessors, that's a little bit of a misnomer. If assessors are doing it correctly, they assess it according to the use, not the zone. That's what they're supposed to be doing, just so you know. So you could be in agriculture and you're running a landscape retail operation. It should be zoned, taxed, or assessed differently. But I can't say assessors actually do that. They would belong.
Okay, anybody else, any comments? Steve, did you want to make a motion to table, or
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table so we can talk about it in our caucuses.
is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Let's have a roll call.
Tom Whitehall,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Steve Rowland,
Yes.
Lori Summers,
Yes.
Denise Winfrey,
Yes.
Art Ferry,
Okay, it's tabled. Jim, you still here?
Yeah, so if I can make one other comment. I think the discussion, as Steve said, caucus, I think the discussion really needs to take place maybe between staff and the land use committee. I'd be more, I'll make sure that I'm here. But I think if you're going to have a discussion, it's more of a zoning ordinance discussion, and maybe staff can talk about not what's allowed, but what they think the best practices are in these types of cases. Just to give us a little more, and certainly we want to do what's best practice. So that's the only request I would have now. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, CC 18055. Just got that. Janine?
Zoning case ZC 18055 is a request for a map amendment from R1 to C4. This takes place in Homer Township. The owner is trust number 41560 with Francine Martins and Joseph Hummel, each 50% beneficiaries of that trust. The agents are Andreas Gedvillis and Curtis Heyman. The applicant, or I should say the agents, are requesting this map amendment in order to open up a plumbing company at the site. This is a 3.38 acre parcel that is along Archer Avenue, and it is in an area that is developed commercially with also some industrial, and there is some residential, but those residential parcels have been recently or even historically converted to commercial or industrial uses. The staff recommended approval of the map amendment request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission also recommended approval of the request. There were no objectors. This request is in conformance with the Land Resource Management Plan of the county, and it's actually also in conformance with the City of Lockport's plan for the area, which calls for a flex for that parcel, which means it could go either commercial or industrial for that area.
Motion to approve.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Any objectors to this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next other business is an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission on Hunan. Janine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have Appeal APCD-18-001. This is an appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision for applicant Leo Dallaire. That was zoning case ZC 18046, which was decided on September 4th of this year. The applicant was requesting a variance for lot area from 10 acres to 6.36 acres for an A1 parcel over in Wilton Township. The applicant currently owns a parcel that is 16.44 acres, and the applicant is looking to divide this parcel in half. So a 10-acre parcel that would be compliant with A1 standards, and then a 6.36 acre parcel which would not meet the minimum 10-acre standard for the A1 zoning district, which is why the request for the variance. At the public hearing in September at the Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicant was denied the request by a 3-to-1 vote. He needed all 4 commissioners to vote in the affirmative for the variance, so he did not have the 4 votes required, but he had 3 of those 4 votes. Staff did recommend denial of the variance request because it was not due to a unique circumstance or a hardship. The applicant was, in staff's professional opinion, creating the hardship himself by dividing the parcel and creating a parcel that was deficient in lot area for the A1 zoning district. So the appeal is before you today. The applicant appealed the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision for the variance for minimum lot area from 10 acres to 6.36 acres.
Any questions by the committee? Judy?
Can you please, can you please explain why the applicant is splitting the property?
Sure. The applicant's intent, currently the applicant lives on the property. There is a residence there, and he intends to continue to live there, but he would also like to sell the parcel, the other parcel, to his son, for his son to build a home.
Can I speak to?
Okay, the applicant here is here. Would you come down to the podium? State your name, please.
Leo Delaire, 15839 West Doyle Road, Manhattan, Illinois. Most of the staff report is true and correct, with the exception of a couple items that I know for a fact. When I purchased this property in 2004, I purchased two parcels. A 10-acre parcel, and a 6.36. However, the lot lines were in a different arrangement. If you look at my deed and the surveys, that's what I purchased. Somewhere in the process, it got those two parcels that turned into one. And that's where we stand today with the two parcels into one. So all I'm looking to do is put back to what I bought, and then hopefully allow my son to build a home on the 10-acre parcel. There's a home on the 6.36 parcel right now that was built in 2010 through the whole zoning and process of that. So that's the intent. I don't believe I created a hardship for myself. I thought I purchased two lots. My deed said I purchased two lots. Somewhere in the magic of documentation and the process got changed into one lot at 16.44. So that was my original intent when I purchased it, to do what we did. And there were only 4 members on the board when we went back in September. I wasn't unaware that I needed all 4 of them. Otherwise, I might have canned it and waited another month till all of them were there. But I got 3 out of the 4, and I wasn't aware that I needed all 4 at that time.
Okay, any questions by the committee?
Did the staff notice that the deed was, when he bought it, was 2 parcels and then now it's 1? So it sounds like a mistake or something happened that he didn't even have any knowledge of. Am I right or wrong?
Correct. So the deed for the parcel does reference 2 different parcels, and it references basically a north and south parcel. Now, what we were doing our research on, we talked to mapping and platting, that division was never carried out. So there is no record that those 2 parcels were actually created, according to the county records. Now, the applicant is actually requesting to do an east and west lot. So even if it was a north and south lot, that's not what the applicant is requesting to do under this request here. He wants an east and west lot.
I'm just confused how you can have a deed that if it's, again, I didn't see the deed, so I'm assuming it's correct that that could be.
I haven't.
No, well, I'm just saying, without seeing the deed, if there was 2 lots there already, and then we're saying it's all 1, there's a problem with that. Just because county doesn't have records doesn't mean it didn't exist, because there's a lot of stuff that gets lost sometimes. We don't want to go there. But I think if he's looking to do a change, that's what we have to address, that we shouldn't be assuming that he does have 2 lots already.
Correct, but
So,
we do not have any record of that, and even if there were 2 lots, one of those would still be
if he's
deficient
got a
lot
deed
area.
that shows it, then that's enough for me that would say that he bought it. He says he bought it that way, and he's got proof he did. So if we can't find a record, then why should we say that the government's right and he's wrong when he's got proof that he did it the other way? That's how I look at it. But like you said, it was changing the way the design's going to be. So that's kind of where the question is. Do we want to allow him to change the design? But either way, he should get that changed back to the way his deed says.
Denise?
Mr. Chairman, regardless of what the deed might say and how it is listed, it seems to me that the parcel is certainly large enough to subdivide as he requests, and I would favor that.
Okay.
I agree with Denise.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the appeal of the PCC.
Motion.
Second.
Motion second. Any objectors? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that's your approval. Does this go to the full board? No.
Correct.
Okay. Week from Thursday, it goes to the county board. Okay, next item, concerning cargo containers. Colin?
Good morning. The cargo containers for any zoning ordinance changes to the zoning ordinance to allow cargo containers as a building material and a dwelling unit. We're going to be, the idea is to insert it into the supplementary use regulations, that brand new section where there'll be primarily, it would need to be a special use permit in any district. And then all modifications would need to be subject to building code, the building ordinance. They'll need to be wrapped in some sort of stick-built facade. And the cargo containers would not be able to be installed vertically. It would have to be laid down horizontally. And if it's going to be used for a residential purpose, it would need to be modified with a peaked or pitched roof. That identifies what building materials, exterior building materials are permitted and what materials are not permitted. And then there will be modifications to the other sections in the ordinance regarding cargo containers in industrial areas, and also, let's see, and also the industrial areas, both in supplementary use regulations and accessory uses.
Okay. Any questions by committee? We have a motion.
So this would, so this would end up going to public hearing, PCC.
Okay, this is to send it to public hearing?
Correct.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case, beekeeping.
Yes, it was duly noted that I forgot to add inserts language regarding the making beekeeping permitted in all yards in the residential districts. I have now inserted that material as appropriate. However, I came across that in the all other districts section that it was not addressed. So my question for you today is, do we want to make beekeeping in all yards, in all districts, commercial, industrial, agricultural is already addressed. So that in commercial and industrial districts, should beekeeping be allowed in all yards? Right now, it's only in the rear and side yards and no shop.
I think commercial or industrial might have a big front yard. There may be plenty of room for such a thing. So I'd be interested. Any other comment?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, so we need a motion to make that change. And then
I make that motion to make that change.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And now, so the approval to move it out back to the county board.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve as amended.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item is the bee farm maps. Scott?
Thank you, Chairman Weigel. The county was notified by FEMA and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources that the new digital floodplain maps are for Will County are ready, and they will be effective February 15, 2019. So between now and then, we need to make a couple of changes to our code, Chapter 55 and Chapter 164, basically to adopt the new maps and therefore remain in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. So basically, these maps are, if you're familiar with the old maps, they're on paper, and to some extent, it's difficult to locate things exactly on there. The new digital firm maps are over a aerial photo, so when someone looks at a piece of property, you can locate it much more accurately, so it's much better for staff and for the residents to use these. So basically what I'm asking for today is in Chapter 55, we're striking a reference to Appendix B in Chapter 164, which is basically the date of the firm maps, and I think you've got a copy of that in there. And then we're going to change the date in Appendix B of Chapter 164 to read February 15, 2019. The previous maps were, some of them were from like 1993, so they were older. And so I'm basically, staff's looking for you to concur with the language, and then we're required to hold a public hearing, which would be at the next Land Use Committee meeting on November 13th. And then following that, assuming there's no comments, it would be approved by the county board on the 15th.
Okay, any questions, Dr. Manning?
I'll make the motion to concur with the language change.
Second. Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our business. I have no comments, additional comments. Committee members, any comments?
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about the exemption of those plumbing items from needing a building permit this month.
That'll be on the agenda next month.
They'll be on the agenda next month? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anybody else? Director, any comments?
Yes, sir.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee. I just want to call out, notice here Pat Klein's retirement. She served the county for over 40 years, and this is her last meeting for the committee, which I think she's been doing meeting minutes for this committee for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. It's hard to recall exactly because we've had people in between that have also done it. So just wanted to point that out. Pat's done an exceptional job for the department, and we'll miss her.
Thanks for all your hard work all this year.
We should have had a cake today.
Okay, is there any public comment? We don't need an executive session. We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.